Make a variety of healthy meals in minutes with Evive. Their unique and innovative frozen cubes allow you to quickly prepare a nutritious meal in less than 3 minutes. Go to evivenutrition.ca to find healthy, vegan foods and recipes and use the code Canada's Podcast 10 for $10 off your first order. Welcome to Canada's Podcast, the number one podcast for entrepreneurs by entrepreneurs.
Hi, welcome to Canada's Podcast. I'm your host, Celine Williams, and today I am joined by Dominic Dubé, the co-founder of Evive, which is an innovative, healthy frozen food company in Canada that is best known for their smoothie cubes. They are available in almost every grocery store across the country, as well as online. Dominic, thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Celine. Great to being on the first podcast for the first time.
Absolutely. I'm very excited to talk to you. There's a lot of reasons. I know a little bit about your story, but there's always more to know. And so I like to start with a big, broad question of, can you tell me a little bit about your journey towards the founding of Evive, what your background was, how you got there, what this has looked like for you?
Sure. I'll start by putting a bit of history behind Evive for the listeners who've never heard of the brand before.
Please.
So Evive is a 6 years old company that I co-founded with my wife, Claudia, in Quebec. And we started the company right after college with the idea of making it more accessible for people to prepare very healthy smoothies. And so came up with the idea of a smoothie cubes that would enable people to simply shake their smoothie and go. So no blender smoothie, no cleaning of the kitchen in the morning, but still the very high nutrient, the superfoods, the greens, everything organic, everything plant-based. So that was sort of the vision. And we started without having any idea of what having a business was or starting a business. And, step by step, grocery store by grocery store, we got our way to coast, and now even a little bit in the US, and also we are launching new line outside of the smoothie world. So quite an interesting journey, and happy to share a bit more about it.
So I'm really curious. You started this out of college, you said, with no. So it sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I recognize people can be entrepreneurs when they're quite young, but it sounds like neither of you had really been an entrepreneur before or thought, hey, this is the thing I want to do, is be an entrepreneur.
Yeah, that's so true. Yeah, never saw ourselves as entrepreneurs. We were, I did mechanical engineering, and I was gonna go and work in a shop somewhere in Quebec as a mechanical engineering, and Claudia was doing a psychoeducation, which is psychology for children, pretty much, and she was into her master actually. And, but she had that passion. Chloe always had that passion for nutrition, and healthy food. And she was making those very complete smoothie. And it just was so obvious to us that this wasn't accessible for most people, because of the complexity of putting all those ingredients together, of knowing what superfoods to add with what, and making it delicious, but also very nutritious. People have to take the time, and in the morning, nobody has time. So we just saw that, everybody would win to drinking more smoothies, but the accessibility of it wasn't there. So pre-making them in little cubes was just, it was just an idea that we loved. And we started selling, very homemade prototype on a Facebook page. And, we got a couple of orders from friends and friends of friends in our hometown, and we were like, you know what? Let's give it a go. Let's put our things on the side for a moment and try it for 4 or 5 months and see where it gets us. And then after 4 or 5 months, you're like, it was super hard. It was like not fun at all. But we had a feeling that we needed to continue, and so we pushed, and eventually we had a team and a plant, and everything sort of came together.
So
yeah.
I love that. And I love that it came from, and I think this is such an interesting thing that happens, is it comes from your own experience, right? Where you're like, this is the thing that I am doing that I am seeing a gap in because I use it myself, right? That it's something that you use. And to me, quite often the best stories are stories like that, where it's, I would like to have something like this to make my life easier in the morning. And lo and behold, you create a product that many people feel the same way about. So I think that's really cool. I'm curious, you said it was very hard at the beginning. What was challenging? Like, what was the hardest part of getting it to where it is now, of getting through those first months? Because it's also a really unique way to start it, selling it on Facebook, going through the way that you did it. It's quite unique.
I mean, when I look back at it, I'm like, it was a weird first year, because we didn't even know how to sell a food product. Literally, like, how do you get in the grocery stores? How do you deliver? How do you price it? How do you make it? What's the rules for the packaging?
Yeah.
So all those things, we had zero answers, and nobody around us, who had done a similar journey that we could just, call and refer to. So it felt really, like destabilizing, because we didn't have any answer. And, you go out of school, and at school you have a game plan. You know what you're going to do for the next 4 months, and then for the next year, and you just go step after step, and you study your thing, and you get through it.
Yeah.
And then you enter the Evive journey, and you don't have a plan. There's nothing you can follow that'll guide you to a destination. So that was pretty tough. And manufacturing the product, not having any capital for machineries or even renting a place was a bit hard. So we were making the smoothies in our parents' kitchen for the first 3 months, and then we found a small little place that were making handmade pastas that had a table in the back. That's all they had for us, and so we were paying, like, I think it was $100 or $200 per month to access that table, and they had a freezer space, and so that's where we produced for a whole year after that. Wow. Hand cutting the cubes with a big knives, and scooping them in craft paper bags, and home delivering them to people. And when there was no way, the pricing and all the energy that we put into it made sense financially, but we had no idea. We didn't even know how to calculate it. So, but it got us through the first year and validated the concept, learned a ton of things. We sort of understood how to go through the grocery model. We found a distributor, and then we were able to sort of grow from there. So that, I would say, that was the first year. Yeah, pretty intense.
So what was the turning point of going from, having a table in the back? And I don't know if this is going to be phrased right, so bear with me, but from having that table in the back of a place that made pasta that you used some freezer space, to being able to get a distributor and get into grocery stores, what happened that turned that table? Because there's a lot of things, right? It could be an investor, it could be a mentor, it could be who you spoke to. Like, I'm just curious what that looked like for you, what that change was. Yeah.
Couple of things. We got into an incubator in our hometown. Yeah. So got a bit of tips from there. What's your business model? How are you going to fund this? And so that those types of questions that just oriented us to what the priorities were. And then a year and a half after we start, we got a couple of angel investors, and some of them had food backgrounds. And so at that time, we started to have a better view of, who the distributors were, what margins do you have to build in your product to make it work, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, we obviously learned much more by actually doing it, but we had a couple of people, very generous people, that we could call and talk to.
Yeah. I love that. And I think that's thank you for sharing that. Cause I think that those incubators, having mentors, having people that have some of that insight is often the key to that next level of success. It's often the key to getting it from someone's table in the back of a kitchen to what you've been able to produce now. And I think that's a really important thing to acknowledge as part of your journey. So I appreciate you sharing that.
For us, even with a little bit of capital and some mentoring, the manufacturing piece was a challenge for the first 3 years, because after that table in the back thing, we didn't have the capital to build $1 million plant, right? And nobody was producing what we were doing, so we couldn't just go and ask for somebody to co-pack it,
right?
So we had to produce it. So we found another place, bigger place, with a couple of equipments that they had already, an incubator, but for food in Saint-Hyacinthe, which is south shore of Montreal. And we produced there for almost 3 years. And we built a team, and it was an incubator, but we had a small room, built a team from just me and one of my friends producing to, at the end, we were, I think, 25 working 2 shifts, everything by hand. So that ramp up was quite interesting, because we ended up having a manufacturing plant, but not owning any building or any machinery. So that was helpful. Lots of time, but we made it work without intensive capital investment. And then we sort of moved out of there into a partnership, sort of a co-packer agreement, because we had sort of the volume to justify somebody else adapting their plant to the Evive production.
That's phenomenal. And it's so interesting how you navigated the consumer product goods space without having a background in it, because I think it is a uniquely challenging consumer packaged goods, CPG. I said it wrong, but I think it's a uniquely challenging space, especially if you don't have a background in it, right? Like, I think it's phenomenal that you took on all these different ways of getting to where you are now to learn and to keep going, because it sounds like a lot of work.
Yeah, I mean, all the industry have their challenges. But food has their own. I've always find myself lucky that our product is not perishable because it's frozen. Yeah. I have friends that are in cold pressed juice companies and stuff like that, and they have to deal with short shelf life.
Yeah.
And that for me would just be like so much more complex. So you can always compare yourself to another person in the industry. But yeah, I think being in the food industry in Canada, one of the challenge for the food entrepreneurs is how can you get it out of the country? How can you start making some noise in the US? And that's where we're working on right now. And there's a couple of very inspiring Canadian companies that are working on that at the same time as we. So we exchange tips and tricks, but building a brand that can go in the US hasn't been done that often, Mm-hmm. So that's sort of our goal, make it work in the US as well. And it's starting nicely. We started in October, September last year, and it's going nicely, but many challenges ahead. It's like starting a new company. I'm pretty excited.
I think I spoke to Susie from Love Good Fats. I don't know if you know them. So I spoke to her a couple of months ago, and they're in the US now, and she was saying something similar, that it's like launching a different company when you go into the States. And so hers are not frozen. I imagine it's even more challenging when you have something that is fresh or frozen than it is when it's something that has a much longer expiration date, like a packaged bar, right? So I imagine that you are facing specific challenges inside of what you're doing. And congratulations for doing it. I think it's really exciting that it's launching in the States.
Yeah, thank you. We launched as an e-commerce business first in October last year with people can subscribe to a box of smoothie that they receive every couple of weeks. And yeah, it's a model that's been there in the US for a couple of years now. Yeah. So, US people have been buying food online for numerous years. The education is sort of it's more ingrained in their purchasing habits than it is in Canada. So that's good for us. But now we're sort of navigating the retail space, entering our first retail doors, and so that's interesting. We, although we have all those prior success in Canada and all those numbers to show, they don't really care because it's like, what have you done in the US? And so you sort of need to find the first couple of retail chains that they'll give you a chance. Even though you have no prior success in the country. So
Evive wants to inspire you to get more from life through healthy eating. For a breakfast smoothie, simply put the cubes in a bottle, add your liquid of choice, wait 20 minutes and shake. The best part is you don't even need a blender. Our lunches are also very versatile. Quickly prepare a soup or a bowl and personalize your meal with your favorite sides like rice, pasta, or quinoa. Go to evivenutrition.ca to find healthy vegan foods and recipes and use the code Canada's Podcast 10 for $10 off your first order.
Yeah, it's so interesting how they discount what has happened, and it's a different market, right? I recognize that it's not. But it's really interesting how it's like, okay, that's great that it worked in Canada, but that doesn't tell us anything about here. It's such an interesting difference in how they approach the markets. So I'm curious. Evive is 6 years old now, started in 2015. Is that right? So if you were to go back to 2015, Dominic and Claudia, and you were to have a chance to talk to them, what would you tell them now? Like, what advice would you give them? What would you want them to know as they're starting this business?
Yeah. It's a good question. It's hard to answer because we've made so many mistakes, right? And we've lost so much time making those mistakes. But I've asked myself, like, if I hadn't done all those little mistakes and all those pains that we had, I don't think Evive would be what it is today, and I don't think the product would be what it is today. So it would be hard to not go through those obstacles. Yeah. I think obstacles is the way. I believe that's so true. So I don't think I'd go back. I think I'd do it again. But there's maybe one thing that I think we could have learned a little bit sooner, was that we were not passionate about food manufacturing. And if I had figured out sooner that, we should focus on product development and marketing and branding and all of the things that passionates us sooner, I think it would have been a little less painful.
I think that's totally fair.
Yeah.
I think so. What were some of the, what were the biggest challenges that you faced in doing what you've done and getting to where you are? Because, from an outside lens, I see things like not having a background in CPG, not having a background in food menu. And I'm like, that seems like a lot, but that doesn't mean that from your perspective is what you would say, here's the biggest challenges. Here's this part that we just messed up royally.
Yeah. Everything that was totally new to us, like food manufacturing, and doing it without capital, that was I'd say the number one challenge. And then raising capital was also a challenge because I had really no clue how to approach this. And it's a competitive thing, to raise capital. Some vetted investors, they get pitched all the time. So you need to have a compelling story and you need to show the right things. So it took me a while to understand that dynamic, and eventually, we're able to raise successfully a Series A in 2019. But that path to understanding the fundraising process was lots of no's, lots of no's. So that was awesome learnings. So I would say those two things. Yeah.
I think that's very valuable for our listeners and our viewers, because we tend to glorify the idea of raising capital without talking about the hard part of it, right? Like, it validates a company, which is true, but it's not for everyone. And it is challenging. It's not an easy thing it's not like you just go out and say, here's my business idea. And people are like, great, let me throw some money at you.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, it all depends, with who you want to raise and how you want to raise. But Chloe and I were pretty picky in a sense that we didn't want to raise money to raise money. We want to raise it with the right partners. And so that adds a layer of complexity. It reduces your list of funds or angel investors. And then you want to raise at the right valuation. You don't want to sell for cheap. So we were patient in a way. We wanted to build up the stories and the numbers nicely so that we would get the right valuation, a good valuation. So those two things made it a bit slow and complex for us. But in the end, I'm so grateful we were patient and we worked hard to build those economics because it's allowing us to go our own way and keep the company going in a direction that we intended it to go 6 years ago, without any external person trying to go in a different route. So
I think that's really good tips for anyone who's thinking about, just for the record, I'm going to say it, for anyone who's thinking about raising money is to be particular. Don't just take money from anyone. Like, let's be really clear on who you want to take money from and what that partnership, because it is a partnership, is going to look like. And then also to be patient about how you value your company and what your company's valued at, not to rush in just because someone's giving, someone, maybe not the right person, is saying, here's some money for you. I think those are really good tips in general.
Yeah, because you'll get term sheets. We got term sheet 2 months after, not even 2 months after we started fundraising, but it was terrible terms, because that's probably what we were showing. We were probably showing we're a terrible company, but because we're in the early steps of the process.
Yeah.
So they see that, investors that I've seen tons of pitch, they see that you're new to the game and the confidence level is quite low. So they'll pay for something that their confidence is quite low. So you want to build up that confidence and that network effect to build a better value. Basically. Yeah.
So I'm going to ask this question because I know that you are both, this is slightly off topic, but because you are both life and business partners with your wife,
yes.
I'm curious, how do you balance that? And if someone is interested, if someone's like, ooh, I think I want to go into business with my partner, what advice would you give them? Because I imagine that there are some very unique challenges to being both.
Yeah, it's for us, it's great. Since day one, we wanted to give it a go. We wanted to try and share a project together. I think we were lucky in the sense that our skills and our interests are very different. While I would go at the plant and do all the manufacturing and stuff, she would be doing the branding and owning the branding and building all that and marketing. And so we had our own things. And it always stayed like that. We sort of had our business unit and we're always exchanging about the company as a whole, but we were not doing the same thing. So that I think was pretty important. And then we're not people that fight a lot. I've been with Chloe for 11 years and we don't fight much, or we fight in a very healthy way.
Yeah.
And so when things get tense in the company, it's easier to deal with, especially when you start having employees. You don't want to be obviously fighting with your co-founder, and that can bring a weird dynamic. But yeah, for us, it's been great. It's great to share the day-to-day and the challenges and the risks and all that.
I think that's always the wonderful thing about having any business partner, right? Is that you have someone who gets it.
Yeah.
right? Who is like, yeah, I'm in this every day with you. I get what you're going through. I think that's a really powerful thing in general. I can appreciate that.
Mm. But yeah, I think the number one thing is, if you want to try it, and just make sure that you don't go maybe all in, because if thing doesn't work out, you have an exit door. But for us, it was really, really progressive. Like the first year, we could have literally stopped after 1 year and we had zero debt, and we would just have learned, tons of things. So for us, it was always going step by step. And, you know what, if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. We were not like putting her house and her kids in guarantee to the bankers. So,
yeah, I mean, I think that's an important thing to keep in mind in general, right?
Yeah.
Is that it's finding that balance of risk and reward, right? Mm-hmm. If you have no debt and you're not mortgaging your house, you're not putting things at risk, then the reward makes more sense. But for some people and for some times, the risk might not be worth it. And so it's finding. You and Claudia found your own balance of risk and reward and pursued this in a way that made sense. For someone else, it's going to be different.
Yeah. For us, it was for the first year, and then you get in at some point, if you want to continue, you have no chance you need to get some money from the bank and this and that. And then the dynamic change. You can't just quit anytime. But we had sort of a first year for us. It could be 3 months, could be 6 months, but we had that space where we could test it out.
Yeah. I love that. So I want to go back to something you said at the beginning, which was that you're known for your smoothie cubes, but there's more to come. So tell me a little bit about what's still to come for Evive. What's the future of this company look like? What do you guys have, under wraps that might be soon?
Well, yeah, Celine, I was talking about, how Chloe was making those very healthy smoothies in the morning, and we saw a gap in the market, and we saw the same gap, but for lunch preparation. Especially now that people are working from home, the lunch is like in between two meetings, and it's a weird time where you want to eat, but you don't have much time. So we want to make it simpler and healthier to do lunch prep. So the concept is meal cubes. We're in the same idea of the frozen cubes. Yeah. So meal cubes that are very versatile. You can pop them in hot water, and it makes you a soup. That will, very filling soup. Or you pop them on quinoa or rice or pasta, and it makes a very healthy bowl. So that's where we've been up to for the last couple of months. We launched the meal cubes in about 50% of the retailers across the country. So you'll find them in Sobeys, Loblaws, natural food stores, and also they're available online. And we also sell pre-cooked quinoa, pre-cooked pastas that are frozen. So you can literally assemble your bowl in no time during your lunch prep. So flavors like chili, we have a Thai bowl, and vegan mac and cheese. So healthy options, but that also taste delicious.
I love that. I think that's huge. As I am someone who worked from home before the pandemic started. I run my own business. I work from home. And you're right. Even for those of us who were not stuck at home because of the pandemic, lunch is often the hardest thing, because I have 30 minutes between two calls or between two things, or I'm trying to multitask. And something like this sounds phenomenally easy to do. And easy to do is, I think it's the reason that I love the idea of your smoothie cube so much, is that it's easy. Not everyone has a blender. Not everyone has the time to get all the fresh ingredients and balance it out and blah, blah, blah. You've made it so easy and accessible for anyone to have a healthy breakfast and a healthy and easy lunch.
Yeah. And something that is very Evive in the philosophy of the product is that it's not a frozen meal that you just put in the microwave. It's something you make, you can assemble the way you want. You feel for a soup, you do a soup. You feel like, having the Thai on some rice noodle, you do that. You can add vegetables to it, so you really make it your own, but it takes 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So that's the cool thing.
I think that's amazing. I look forward to seeing all of these. I'm looking forward to what else might have coming out in the future and to what this looks like.
Like I was saying, Evive is we're an R&D and marketing hub. We love to have ideas and develop them and present them to the Canadian and US market. That's what we like to do.
So cool. So for our listeners and our viewers, where can they find you online? Where can they find out more about your smoothie cubes and now your delicious lunches as well?
Yes. So evivenutrition.com. In Canada, in the US, we ship nationwide.
Perfect. And we'll have the link to that in the show notes for this so people can find it really, really easily. Dominic, it's been lovely chatting with you. Thank you for taking the time. I really appreciate this. Your journey is fascinating, and I know our listeners are going to love it.
Thank you so much. It was great. It was great chatting with you, and thanks for the invitation.
Absolutely.
Evive nutritious drinks and foods help you to live a healthy lifestyle so you feel amazing and have the time to do what makes you happy. Go to evivenutrition.ca to find healthy vegan foods and recipes and use the code CannabisPodcast10 for $10 off your first order.